I'm very grateful to have the opportunity to speak with you in person and also virtually. So the topic is speaking up about situations of injustice. And two of the Unitarian Universalist principles that guide the talk are the inherent worth and dignity of every person, and our belief in justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. So according to GLAAD, that's the world's largest LGBTQ media advocacy organization, in 2023, over 300 anti-LGBTQ bills have been filed in state legislatures around the country, with over half specifically targeting transgender people, particularly the youth. So these bills are aimed at banning evidence-based gender-affirming care, trans sports bans, drag bans, bathroom bans, forced misgendering, and so on. Should I repeat? Over 300 across the country. Okay. So all of this comes at the expense of the transgender and non-binary individuals living in our community. It takes a heavy toll on people. So for instance, there's a woman here in Indianapolis that I know that has received death threats for speaking out against transgender hate here in Indianapolis. Another friend, when I mentioned that I was coming to speak on this topic today, it's a transgender friend, said, in our circles, faith community, spiritual circles, it's 100% okay to preach about finding peace in adversity and overcoming the emotional obstacles that confront us. But it's way less okay to talk about how you feel helpless and hopeless when your character is constantly maligned by others. You need some emotional backup to help you hold on to any notion that love ever wins and that your life can ever be worth living. So when we read about these things in the newspapers, on social media, or have chats, I think for some people it's abstract, but for the people who are transgender, non-binary, they're living with it every single day, and it impacts their lives. So there's a reading, I'm just going to share an excerpt of it. It's from, with permission from the UU Worship website. The author is Alex Capitan. Tell them the inherent right of every person to have full authority and agency over choices they make about their lives and their bodies is a spiritual and human imperative, that there's a word for this, and it's liberation, and that there is nothing more worth fighting for. Tell them that in your faith tradition, we don't love people despite their differences or because they can't help being different. We love people because of their differences and because diversity enriches our world and our communities. Tell them that in the final reckoning, there is only one choice that will be judged, and that's their choice. Tell them you hope they choose love. So the Freedom to Be book that I wrote, that came about in about 2019. I was at my daughter's graduation party and an extended family member wasn't there. This is a youth who's gender nonconforming. And I said, oh, hey, where's this person, so-and-so? And what I was told is they were in the hospital because they had had a suicide attempt. And so the political attacks, the media attacks, the arguing about people's worthiness is something we have to speak out about, right? Because we know what happens when society starts to dehumanize groups of people, right? We know from history that that's a dangerous road to go down. And we also know collectively we cannot be silent when that happens. Okay. So in the book, I talk to transgender non-binary youths, I talk to parents, and I talk to adults, and basically just asking, how can we be supportive? How can we be better allies? What do we need to know? What do we need to learn? Okay, so some of the parents, in describing their transgender youth, I'm just going to give you some of the sentences. My child is amazing, talented artistically, a freedom fighter, and smart. Another parent, my child has always been the bravest person I have ever known. Another person, my child is incredibly caring with a really good heart. She appreciates nature and spirituality. She is very kind. She doesn't smoke cigarettes. She doesn't drink alcohol. She doesn't do drugs. She's just a really kind individual. Another parent, my child is a problem solver, always has been. He is funny, smart, compassionate, a combination of creativity and tenacity. My child has a generous heart, is passionate. My child's strength and courage in the face of adversity is amazing, very inspirational. He is very kind, caring of others, a straight A student, a band drum major, a valued member of the theater department, French club president, and winner of multiple academic awards. Okay. And it's the same with the adults, right, that I spoke with. There's an opera singer. There's a dancer who studied with a famous troupe in New York City. There's musicians who play guitar, tuba, piano, violin, saxophone, and the trumpet. Right? It's very impressive. Advanced degrees in a variety of fields, a master's in business. One of the people I spoke to had 2 master's degrees. Others were working toward advanced degrees. And of course, we don't need degrees to be inherently worthy, right? As we learned in the pandemic, the people working in our grocery stores, the people stocking the warehouses are essential workers that keep our society functioning. So that goes back to the inherent worth and dignity of every person. And all of that is just to say, these are people like the rest of us, like everyone, worthy and valued in their own rights. So some common themes that came up when I was working on the book, there's a number of them, but I'm only going to focus on 3. But before I get into that, I just want us to pause for a moment, take a deep breath. Think about, if you have children, think about when they were young. If you have grandchildren, think about your grandchildren. If you don't have children, think about your nieces and nephews when they were in elementary school, middle school, high school. If you don't have children, you can think about the kids who are in this room or were here for story time. I just want us to hold all the youth in our hearts. So one of the themes that came up was access to bathrooms and bathroom safety. So one of the parents, Diana, she has a non-binary child and also a transgender child. And she says, my main thought is the bathroom use in school and how my child struggled. Probably several UTIs, urinary tract infections, have been attributed to the fact that he preferred not to go to the bathroom at school just to avoid the issue and not peeing when he had to. It helped that as soon as school was over, he went to the library, which was 100 feet from the high school. We live 2 blocks from the school, so that helped as well. A great thing about being a mom to kids on the gender spectrum is the generational learning from them. The hardest part is the worry that they're going to face hostility, judgment, bigotry, and possibly violence. If you're out with transgender friends, offer to go to the bathroom with them. Take a step above and beyond just friending them and help be an advocate regarding the bathrooms. I know this is all more than just bathrooms, but our government leadership can be like Neanderthals. One thing everyone can do is ask for gender-neutral bathrooms. I love businesses like Ruth's Cafe, where instead of male or female, On the bathroom door is a Star Trek character, and it says, "To boldly go." I want it to be more than just bathroom issues and human hygiene, but in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, transgender people do not have even basic needs accommodated. People should be more aware it's just a bathroom. Just educate yourself and think about other options, because I know my son has gotten sick and he doesn't drive, so he takes public transportation. If he has to run in someplace and use the bathroom, that would be a big ordeal for him. So yeah, be more accepting and educate yourselves. Another issue that came up is that we need to stop teaching the hate. So Amy is a mother. She's 54 years old, and her child is Xander. She also calls Xander Z, and he's 14, and so I met with both of them. So Amy, the mom, says, when Xander was 2 years old, we were at Cracker Barrel restaurant with his grandparents. His grandpa said Xander could pick out whatever he wanted. I went over to Z and told him, and he didn't even stop and think. He ran straight to the display of boys' t-shirts and shorts, and that's what he wanted. I didn't say, no, you need to buy something pink because that's what Grandpa wants. I never forced it, but I hollered at him so many times. Why are you so disgusting? Stop that. Had I known I was raising a boy, I would not have been so surprised, because I had a brother and I knew how they were. It was more my disconnect from who he was to who I thought he was. So I kind of wasn't shocked when he came out to me at age 11, but at the same time, I didn't want that for him, because I know how cruel the world can be, and I know what a hard journey it is. I was like, why can't you just be a boy at home and a girl in public? Which was the wrong thing to say. But that's how I felt. At 11, he said, I'm pretty sure I'm a boy. And then Xander jumps in and says, no, I am a boy. And she said, what makes you think that? But I knew since I was 6 or 7, I just didn't have the words to put on it. And then the mom says, the daycare gave us picture albums. And when we look back through the pictures, the day when his smile was the brightest was when he was dressed as a boy, and he always played with the boys. And Xander says, my best friends in daycare were Nathan and Eli. One of my favorite pictures is where I'm carrying a baby doll like a football with a backwards hat on it. I just have the biggest smile in the world. And then the mom says, the thing is, life started getting real difficult in his 3rd grade class. That's when this clique of girls who were popular asked Z to join them. And Z was like, no, thank you. Then they started picking on him. That's when the bullying and self-harm started. So I just want to pause for a second and make sure we take that in. Life started getting difficult in 3rd grade. That's when the bullying and the self-harm started. Okay. So I'm trying not to gloss over anything super important, if I can get through it without crying. So I'm just emotional. Just from 3rd grade to 8th grade, it was a constant struggle and under the care of psychiatrists while trying to figure out how to help him be happy. He was on antidepressants during those years. He got thrown out of school so many times for fighting and being combative. He was failing almost everything, and he has a very high IQ. All of that, I think, was a function of him not being his true self and using up all of his bandwidth to deal with that. It finally got so bad in the 8th grade, I had to pull him out of school for 6 or 7 weeks. I homeschooled, and he socially transitioned. We swapped out the wardrobe, and that's when we told friends and family. The change has been absolutely incredible. He's doing well in school. He's making friends. He's pleasant. He's helpful. He doesn't fight anymore. So just that change of being okay and accepting the transition has helped. I just called the school and I said, hey, he's coming back. And by the way, he prefers male pronouns and his name is Xander. They gave him a key to the bathroom. And then Xander says, I didn't like being separated at school and having my own bathroom. I wish they would have just let me use the guy's bathroom. And the mom says, well, weren't you afraid to use the guy's bathroom because you were afraid they would beat you up? And Xander says, no, I wasn't afraid. And the mom says, okay, we were afraid they would beat him up. Things were not going well at that time with a particular group of boys. And then Xander says it was kind of here or there, 50-50 chance whether it would be okay or not. Certain teachers were okay. Some teachers were kind of okay. And some teachers dead named me on purpose, which is using the wrong misgendered name. So the mom says the parents and the adults teach the hate. As a society, we need to stop teaching the hate and just accept everyone for who they are. It's no one's business if my child is transgender or not. This child is a boy, so why do you ask, right? I don't ask you about your child being cisgender. And just as a side note, before I continue, the people in the libraries who are reading to children, the issue about drag performers reading to kids, volunteering their time to read books to children, are helping with this acceptance and awareness of diversity, and they're helping so the kids don't go back and torment the children in their classrooms. They're helping so those kids don't grow up to be transphobic. I mean, I feel like we should all be thanking them so much for that public service. Okay, the next theme is that a lot of transgender individuals and non-binary individuals in the book mention they are ongoing and have been subjected to violence, which is why we need people educating and doing the work on this topic. So Andrew in high school says, all through high school, I faced bullying, emotional and physical. This is in Indiana. I believe it was the Kokomo area. I was passing out buttons in the hallway while kids were going to class, and a guy came up to me, grabbed me by the chest, and shoved me into the women's restroom. I don't remember what he said, but he called me faggot or something. A similar incident happened where I was walking in the hallway, and a kid walked past me and slapped my books out of my hand and said, "Move, faggot." So I want to pause again. A guy came up to me, grabbed my chest, and shoved me into the women's restroom. Right? This is in our high schools. This is assault. Another person, Vivian, that I spoke to, also transgender. In middle school, I would carry my books clutched to my chest, and I remember boys telling me off and telling me to carry my books at my side because I was carrying my books like a girl. When I reached high school, there was a person in high school who was genderqueer. I don't know exactly what their gender identity was, but they were some form of gender nonconforming, and that introduced me to the concept in high school. I would not have come out in high school because that person was terribly bullied. Even associating with that person would have been a problem. There were people I did confide in, and all of them said, do not come out, do not do this. This is going to be really bad. Don't even think about it. So I didn't. I remember I tested it out with my dad. I made fun of a transgender girl with my dad to gauge his reaction. And he also made fun of her. That was the point where I knew I couldn't come out. So Vivian says, believe us when we tell you something is hurtful. Stand up for us when we're not around. I was born in Indiana. I have lived here my entire life. I don't know anywhere else at all. And it feels like I'm not welcome in this state. It feels like what they want is for me to leave. A lot of people in the city and the state are like, well, if you don't like it here, you should just move to the West Coast. But I don't know anywhere else. So I guess I just hope Indiana becomes more welcoming and more understanding. So Vivian is 24 years old. The last story I want to share, just a snippet of, is Cambria, who also reiterates that this concept that LGBTQ people are obligated to move from the rural places we grew up in or otherwise live in is so short-sighted. If you feel like you have to leave your home to be someplace with more resources, that's one thing. But to assume that we are only in the cities and only able to have fully rewarding lives in the cities is just plain erasure of the rural queer life of which there is a wealth. So Cambria says, I was a gender nonconforming kid from an early age. I'm not going to ignore that being called the pronouns expected of my assigned sex didn't affect me. I deeply resented that for a very long time, especially after I hit puberty in high school. There was a lot of self-loathing, and I went to a really dark place. There is absolutely a level of violence against non-binary and transgender people. I have been harassed. I have been physically attacked. When I was first trying to come out, I faced a lot of oppression from my friends and my family, honestly, because they saw it as deviant. They saw it as embarrassing because what would the neighbors think? What would their church friends think? That put a lot of pressure on me because my schedule was highly regulated in high school. If I wasn't in band, I was busy doing something else. I eventually found a greater degree of freedom, but it was through much struggle. I haven't sustained any serious injuries because I learned how to defend myself from a young age. But it's tiresome being on your guard all the time, I'll tell you that. So in asking what we can do, what allies can do, Cambria says, if you see something, say something. Don't be a bystander. Don't be afraid to act if you can. A lot of us make excuses. That's not my business. That would be rude of me to step in. They're just having a lively discussion or whatever. No, they are yelling at each other and close to blows. If you're physically capable of stepping in, do it. Learn how to de-escalate conflicts. That is extremely important. There are books and resources that teach how to do that. It's something I learned how to do for others as well as myself. It is something we have the power to do. Another thing I highly recommend is to pay more attention to defending youths. Often, folks who are minors feel very alone. And when they're not alone, they feel talked down to, as if they aren't just, people, but younger. I just want to encourage everyone to meet their neighbors and look into the struggles that are happening in their areas. I feel like everyone deserves better. More than that, I feel like we not only deserve a better world, I feel like we have to work to create a better world because climate change is going to get worse. So my conclusion is that we need to rally together to stop the violence against transgender youth, especially in our schools here in Indiana. That is something we can advocate for. We need to support not only the transgender, non-binary individuals, but the parents and the families that are in our communities. We can also address things that matter. Like Ambria said, there's climate change. There's all sorts of things going on that are being ignored or pushed aside in place of, what I would say is a diversion, except that it's impacting people, right? Okay, so it's going to take all of us. That's how change happens, is when we all start to speak up, all of us. So Friday, March 31st, if you didn't know this, is Transgender Day of Visibility. It's a day to honor and celebrate the transgender individuals in our communities, lift them up, while also drawing attention to discrimination and violence in the community. So Kit Malone, who works at the ACLU, at the back of the book, she has all sorts of suggestions for how allies can make a difference in their community by showing up, speaking up, contacting local lawmakers, getting involved in organizations, and being there for people. So there's lots of things we can do, lots of ways we can be involved, lots of ways we can help to live out our covenant, to live out our principles, to be there in service, to be there in action, and to be there in love for the other people in our world and in our global families. Okay, so I have a closing reading from Reverend Maureen Killoran. We each have gifts that can make a difference in the world. In this coming week, may you do at least one thing to support the broken, to welcome the stranger, to celebrate what is worthy, and to do the work of justice and love. Be strong, be connected, each day act so that you and others may be a little more whole. Thank you.